says New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator and have information about the deceased person on them.
Okay, and there's another label there. Was that label from you, from your office?
Both of these bags have 2 additional labels on them, and I don't recognize either one of them as from my office, no.
Does the label from your office, OMI, does that indicate that any GSR was collected?
So these labels, in addition to identifying the dead person in the case, also have what they are, and one is labeled as handbag right hand, and the other is labeled as handbag left hand.
And there's no indication from your office that any GSR was collected, correct?
That's right.
Your Honor, I would offer states 490 and 491.
No objection.
And that's all the questions I had, Your Honor.
Okay, will the doctor be excused?
Yes.
Will the doctor be excused?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Dr. Mitchell,
Thank you.
state your final next witness.
State calls Steve Montano.
Ms. Sawyer, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and the penalty of law?
I do.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and where you're employed?
My name is Steve Montano, and I'm with the New Mexico State Police.
And does Steve stand for Stephen, or is it just Steve?
Just Steve.
Okay. And could you spell your last name, please?
Sure. My last name spelling is Montano.
How long have you been with the state police?
A little over 15 years.
Now, what is your current assignment?
My current assignment is with the New Mexico State Police Special Operations Bureau, and I'm assigned to the helicopter section
How long have you been with that section?
since March.
What did you do? What was your previous assignment with state police?
My previous assignment was with the New Mexico State Police Investigations Bureau. I started in September of 2007 in the which would be Zone 1 in Las Vegas. And in October of 2009, I transferred down to Zone 3, which is Albuquerque, with New Mexico State Police Investigations Bureau.
So when you were with the Investigations Bureau, was there any areas that you specialized in or concentrated on?
Initially, when I was in Zone 1 with in Las Vegas, I handled everything from white-collar crimes on through homicides. When I moved to Zone 3 Albuquerque, I guess my area that I would cover was violent crime, which was stabbings, shootings, homicides, higher profile cases, officer-involved shootings, that type of nature.
Okay. About how many officer-involved shootings do you think you've investigated in your career?
Gosh.
Either as primary or secondary assisting? Approximate, not an exact number.
I'd say upwards in the number of about 50.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what do I call you now?
Officer.
Still no agent, just officer?
This officer, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Officer Montano.
Been called worse.
Sure, me too. So Officer Montano, were you involved in an investigation of an officer-involved shooting, in fact, the death of an officer, Officer Benner, Officer Greg Benner?
I was, yes.
Could you tell the jury how you became involved in the case?
On that day in particular in May, it was Memorial Day, 2015, we were called out previously in the day. We were actually at another officer-involved shooting, which was in the north-south valley of Albuquerque, and an Albuquerque police officer had been involved. While we were at that scene, I received a phone call from my supervisor at the time, Sergeant Carolyn Lucero, and she stated that for me to start proceeding to the Rio Rancho area, more specific, Pine Tree and Southern, the intersection of Pine Tree and Southern. She told me that I would be the case agent, and that an officer had been shot and did not survive his injuries.
So Officer Montano, you've been sitting in the courtroom through the entire trial, and you've heard all the testimony in this case?
I have.
There is a lot of evidence collected in the case.
Yes, ma'am.
Was all the evidence collected from one agency?
I believe it was from two agencies, Rio Rancho Police Department and from the Mexico State Police.
And where did all that evidence eventually end up?
It eventually ended up going to the Rio Rancho Police Department.
Okay. What I'd like to do, if you know, I'd like to go through the items of evidence, and some I'm not going to list individually, just categories. So
Yes, ma'am.
maybe clear up some of the confusion of where this evidence came from.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the first, there was a Cheetos bag. Do you know where that came from?
Yes, ma'am. So the Cheetos bag was collected at the scene of the shooting, which is right at the intersection of Pine Tree and Southern. Well, it's not right at the intersection. It's about a little ways north on Pine Tree, and the Cheeto bag was actually within the main scene. It was kind of scattered. There was Cheetos scattered about, and there was a Cheeto bag sitting pretty much in the middle of the crime scene.
So what agency collected that?
The New Mexico State Police.
And was it eventually turned over to Rio Rancho?
It was, yes.
Okay. And then what about the handcuffs that were entered into evidence?
So with respect to the Cheetos bag, it was pretty much in the same area. Pretty much in the same area where Officer Benner was shot.
Mm-hmm.
The handcuffs were in the middle of the road in there.
Okay. And there was a glass pipe. Where was that collected from, and who collected it? What agency collected it?
The glass pipe was collected by the New Mexico State Police crime scene team, and I believe that glass pipe was within one of the bushes in between traffic stop, let's say the initial traffic stop, and where the shooting occurred.
Okay. And then what about, there's black hoodie from Tabitha Little's and black gray pants from Tabitha Little's?
I believe those were collected at UNMH.
Okay. From which agency?
I believe Rio Rancho Police Department.
Okay. And then there's a whole series that were labeled on that had been referred to by the lab's technicians as DSW 1 through DSW 11.
Yes, ma'am.
Where were, well, first of all, let's start with DSW 1 through DSW 11. Where were those items of evidence collected from?
So DSW 1 was collected after the Durango was located and transported to the secured garage at the New Mexico State Police Office in Albuquerque. They locked it in the garage, and once we were able to get in and start searching, DSW 1 was a swab, and that was collected off the driver door handle of the Durango.
Okay.
Do you want me to keep on?
Well, yeah, just in general, you don't have to go through each one. I'm just asking, so DSW 1 through DSW 6, were those all from the Durango?
They were all collected as swabs from the Durango.
And what agency collected those?
The New Mexico State Police crime scene team.
Okay. And DSW 7, DSW 8 through 11, were those also collected by the state police?
They were.
And that those pertain to the Durango?
They were, yes.
Now, C1 is a magazine. Do you know where that was recovered from?
I believe C1 was a magazine that was collected from the Chevy Impala.
And what agency collected that?
New Mexico State Police.
Okay, and then you have D1 through G5, which are listed as casings from the crime scene. Do you know where those were collected from?
Okay, so D1 was actually so
Let's start with through SW6, the ones that pertain to Officer Benner.
SW6.
Mm-hmm. Well, SW1 through SW6.
SW1 through SW6, those were collected at the actual shooting scene. So there
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So if there's a stain of blood or suspected stain of blood, a crime scene technician or crime scene agents will get a clean swab, if you will, and swab that area, as opposed to trying to collect all the blood stain that's there. They'll collect a small sample, package it in a clean envelope, and then get it prepared for the crime lab.
Okay, and so would that pertain to actually SW1 through SW14, which are all listed as swabs?
Correct.
From the crime scene?
That would be.
Okay. Let me back up for a second to item D1 from the Durango. Was that a casing or a cartridge?
I believe that was a cartridge.
Okay. Okay, now let's move down to 35 and 38. Sweatshirt and pants from Tabitha Little's. But we already did that one, but
Yes, we did.
we already did that one, okay. Nike shoes belonging to Tabitha Little's.
Those were collected by the Rio Rancho Police Department, and they were collected at the University of New Mexico Hospital.
And what about 40B as well as 44 and 45?
Same thing. They were collected at the University of New Mexico Hospital, and those were also collected by the Rio Rancho Police Department.
What about 59, the standard from James Stalter?
Correct. The standard from James Stalter would have also been collected by the Rio Rancho Police Department.
Let's see. Item C1, magazine. Where was that collected from?
That was collected from the Impala,
Okay, and by what agency?
New Mexico State Police.
Okay. Okay, we did that one. Let's see. Okay, what about G2 through G5? I'm not sure. Did we already do those? We did those, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And again, regardless of what agency collected the evidence, who was the, I guess, the custodian, the ultimate custodian of all the evidence collected in the case?
So all the evidence that was collected was eventually turned over to the Rio Rancho Police Department. It's being held, or it was being held at their evidence vault.
Now, as part of your duties in the investigation, did you have contact with Mr. Romero?
I did, yes.
Okay. And did you have occasion to, I guess, search him or look through his items of clothing?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you find?
So on that particular night, or early the next morning, I should say, when he was taken into custody, he was brought to the New Mexico State Police Office. And the way the New Mexico State Police Office is situated is that they come in the back door, and as you take a right, there's some holding cells. There's a set of 2 holding cells. If you keep going directly forward, there's going to be what's called a squad room. And adjacent to those holding cells is going to be the interview rooms. There's one, we call it the East interview room, and the other one's the West interview room. So as he came through the door, I introduced myself. I told him who I was. I then took off his jacket. I searched his jacket, and all the contents that I found in his jacket were placed on a countertop that was just right there where we were standing, and that's where I put all the contents from his jacket.
Okay. What happened to those items after you took them out?
So Sergeant Paul Chavez with the New Mexico State Police crime scene team, he was responsible for taking photographs of all those items, and he went ahead and did that at that time.
Okay. Now, as the case agent for the state police, are you responsible for collecting all of the reports from the other state police officers who are involved?
Yes, I am. So what happens typically on major cases, we call them major cases because there's a lot of involvement from a bunch of other agents within New Mexico State Police and other agencies. And what I tend to do when I handle these is I ask them, please draft up your report and make sure you forward me a working copy, and make sure that your sergeant uploads the original into the system, which we have a database.
Okay. So was Paul Chavez one of those individuals who provided you with a supplement?
He did.
And in that supplement, did he reference the Durango key?
Objection, hearsay.
He's the case agent, he can refer to it.
So within Paul's report, it does indicate that he did photograph the Dodge Durango key, and the Durango, when it was located, was locked. All the windows were up. It was locked, and there was a brief discussion, or I should say, I contemplated myself the value of smashing a window to access the Durango, as opposed to getting the key to unlock it and to start it, to drive it around, to manipulate it in a fashion that the crime scene guys can move it around, to get photographs, to get, sometimes they need to put it within the parking garage to do alternative lights, if that's what they wish to do. So they actually need the ignition key to move it around without damaging it, so to speak. If we didn't have the ignition key, we would have to have a record there for as many hours as they stay processing the vehicle to move it around, to get access to it, move it in positions that they need it, and that type of stuff. So yes, we did.
So, did Agent Chavez find that key, or did you find that key?
I found the key.
And did Agent Chavez's report indicate otherwise?
He did indicate that I found the key and that he documented it.
Okay. Could I have that? I'm not sure what exhibit number it is. I'm going to hand you what's been marked State's Exhibit. Well, actually, it's been entered as State's Exhibit 431. Could you empty the contents of that, please?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
So it's a black kind of snap key ring with Green Bay Packards.
Okay.
And
where have you seen that before?
This is what was removed from Andrew Romero.
Okay. And when you say
When I removed from Andrew Romero, I should say.
And when you say removed from Andrew Romero, was that the jacket that he was wearing?
Yes.
And did the key come out of that jacket?
Yes.
And you indicated that Paul Chavez was tasked with photographing the items that you recovered from Mr. Chavez?
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, I've shown State's Exhibit. State's Exhibit 487. And I would like to, first of all, approach the witness. I don't know if they're stipulating. Are you stipulating? Okay. So, Your Honor, I would ask that State's Exhibit 487 be admitted. So, do you recognize the items in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
Do you see in that item, in that photograph, the same key that you have before you?
Yes, ma'am. So,
Can you
It's-
come up to the
yes, ma'am.
Dumbo or Elmo or whatever it is? Okay.
So if you could see on the photo, the tip of the key is right here. It's underneath this cigarette box, and the red plastic coating around the key is right there, and then there's the other key ring that holds it to it, and that's the back side. On the other side is the Green Bay Packer emblem.
Okay, thank you. Go back up.
Do you want me to sit back down? Or?
Yes, please.
Okay.
You can stand if you want. Now you indicate, well, I'm sorry, I had one additional question. Hold on one second. So you see on here on this exhibit, again, State's Exhibit 487, appears to be a sticky note that says AR6.
Yes.
What does that refer to?
That's the item number of the contents that were collected.
And does that refer to Andrew Romero?
Yes. And typically what happens with, like, when you see the item numbers with evidence, you'll see like AR6, AR1, SM2, SM3, whatever is assigned. Typically what happens within the Investigations Bureau is I generally ask any of the agents that collect evidence use their initials before the number. Because as Detective Rick Romero mentioned before, you'll have a bunch of ones. You'll have a bunch of twos and threes. And sometimes you get confused of what's one, what's two, what's three, and that tries to avoid that, if you will.
Okay. Now you weren't present during the interviews of, were you present during the interviews of Crystal Romero and or Michelle Candelaria?
I was not. I was at the state police office, but I was not in the interviews.
As part of your role as a case agent, have you reviewed those statements?
Yes, I have.
And were they recorded on audio as well as video?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Have you had a chance to listen to a portion of Michelle Candelaria's?
Yes, I have.
Did you also observe Michelle Candelaria?
Yes.
Does that appear to be how she was dressed and how she appeared when you saw her?
It does.
And when did you see her?
That night,
Okay. And
or
this-
early the next morning, I should say.
early the next morning of the 26th?
Yes.
Okay. And was she wearing these same clothes?
It appears so.
Okay. Did you also have an opportunity to listen to part of her interview?
I did.
Okay. Don't want you to say anything that she said, but what I'm going to ask you is, in your opinion, did her voice sound like a man or a woman?
In my opinion, it sounded like a woman.
Okay, Your Honor, I just have one more item to do with this officer. And I hate to do it, but can you approach me? Sorry. Your Honor, I just wanted to make sure that, I didn't step out of bounds on laying the foundation for this next piece of evidence that the court previously ruled would be allowed. I have redacted, well, it's basically only the portion that the court said we could play. It's completely silent. It starts at the point where Mr. Montano, or Officer Montano, re-enters the room, and the last time after he leaves the room. Is that accurate? Is that 6 minutes?
Yeah.
6 minutes long.
4 minutes.
And I did provide a copy to counsel.
Let me ask Mr. Romero, there was an intermediate portion of that statement where Mr. Montano had started reading him the rights, and there was like 5 pages of, are you okay with that at all?
Oh, no, Your Honor, we're just talking about the very
You
end.
don't play that first part?
No. No, Your Honor. So my concern was, with the court's pleasure just to play it, or I don't know how to lay the foundation without indicating to the jury that he took a statement from it.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a record on our objection for the video coming in, and then if the court is going to allow it anyway, then we don't even need to lay the foundation.
That's fine, too.
Hold on, I'm gonna allow that portion, but without any words. Okay?
There's no words. It's all silent, the whole, completely through. Did you provide a copy to the court?
It's exhibit 451.
John, it's the alleged nonverbal communication that the state is wishing to show the jury. And I think there is some case law on nonverbal communications in New Mexico that they're here, that Steve?
Yeah, so let me just, Your Honor, there's a case called State versus Randy J, and it's 150 NM 683. And what that case talks about, and I was just trying to see if it was a Supreme Court case or not, it's pulling it up right now, is that nonverbal conduct is testimonial, and it is protected under the Fifth Amendment if the conduct reflects a person's communication of his thoughts to another or conveys knowledge of a fact specific to that person. And so the court basically stated in this case, what they found was it was a field sobriety test of a juvenile. And the court said that a field sobriety test is not nonverbal communication. But nonverbal communication, like hand gestures, head nods, or shakes, are considered nonverbal communication and are protected under the Fifth Amendment. And so, and this is a Court of Appeals case from 2011. And I'd ask the court to consider that case before making a ruling on the admissibility of this, because it is nonverbal communication. And it is after the court has already decided that this statement violated the Fifth Amendment. And so I'd ask the court to take a look at that case and reconsider the ruling and allowing in this video.
Your Honor, we've already argued this, and counsel raises no new argument. What she fails to point out, the key word there was testimonial. This clearly is not testimonial because he initiated the contact, and any words that were exchanged are not going to be heard by the jury. It's only any nonverbal gestures he made were certainly not testimonial. They were made by him with no prompting from anyone. The court's already ruled on this, Judge. I would ask that you stand by your earlier ruling.
I reviewed the video a number of times. I don't find this not testimonial. To be communication has to be someone saying something, someone receiving something. There's no one receiving any communication from Mr. Romero. Someone to allow, the way to get it in perhaps is to ask, another blanket was given to him at that time. Maybe the way to get it in.
Did you provide a blanket?
Blanket.
All right,
Leave it at that.
that would be good. Is that right?
And I'll note your objection for the record, Constable.
Any concession to what the court's saying is, we're not waiving the objections given us.
I understand.
Perhaps that's where you can get it. I provided a blanket, he was told.
There's just 60 seconds for you to set it up.
Sure.
We're set up. As long as you can get me up on here.
It's on the laptop.
Correct.
Ask Cortana to play the video. Tell Cortana to play the video.
I'm not going to start either.
So can I just make sure that officer knows what we're doing? Did you provide a blanket?
Yes.
Oh, it's good, Mr. Towns.
All rise.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Officer Montano, during your contact with Mr. Romero, did you provide him a blanket after he complained of being cold?
Yes, I gave him a blanket.
At this time, I would ask to place states, what is the exhibit?
451.
451, I'm not sure if it's been admitted because I don't believe it's been admitted, Your Honor. It was not. Further questions of this witness, Your Honor? Pass the witness.
Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so I want to start with the documentation that you create as part of your investigation, okay?
Sure.
So you do what's called a supplemental report, right?
Correct.
And in the supplemental report, you document everything you're doing, right?
Correct.
Everything other officers are doing in their investigation.
No, they document what they're doing.
Okay, but sometimes you incorporate at least what they're telling you.
I try to touch just on a brief of what they gave me, but yeah.
Okay. And you document sort of chronologically what's transpiring in your investigation, including who you talked to, right?
Correct.
What sort of evidence you saw,
Correct.
what steps you took,
Yes.
okay? And that's important to put all that information in your supplemental report so that that can help jog your memory on what you did on a particular case, right?
Yes.
Okay? And so, because sometimes, of course, time passes before you get to trial, right?
Yes, it does.
And between the time when you did that investigation and when you're coming to testify, it's likely that you've investigated other cases, right?
Yes, I have.
Done work on other important things.
I have, yes.
And so in order to make sure your details aren't getting confused between cases, it's important to document what you're doing during your investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, that's what you're trained to do in the academy, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so we've got the supplemental report. That's one thing you do. You also do a evidence log, right? To log the important things that you're finding as you're conducting your investigation.
Typically on cases, yes, we do.
And that's so that you, again, can remember what you're doing on a given case so that it doesn't get confused with other cases, right?
Correct.
And especially when you're talking about, important evidence, it's important to put that on the evidence log as well, right?
It all depends, ma'am.
Okay. Of course it depends. I mean, you can't say 100% this is what I do all the time, but you would agree that the evidence log, the purpose of that document is to list all important items of evidence, right? Generally speaking.
Correct.
Okay. And then another document that you would create in the course of an investigation may be an arrest warrant or an affidavit for an arrest warrant, right?
Correct.
And for people who don't do this kind of stuff, why don't you describe to the jury what an affidavit for an arrest warrant is?
An affidavit for an arrest warrant is, the affidavit is basically a statement of probable cause asking the judge to issue a warrant for the crimes that you're asking or that you're proving that you can, that were committed.
Okay. And so what you're doing is you're putting in written form for a judge's approval all the facts that you've developed in your investigation so someone can be arrested.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And, excuse me, that form is also very important in your investigation as a law enforcement officer, right?
It is, yes.
And you would agree that it's important to include all the details necessary for the judge to decide whether someone should be arrested or not.
Yes, ma'am.
And you did that in this case, didn't you? For a couple of people, didn't you?
Meaning?
Did you do an arrest warrant for Mr. Romero?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. You did one for Tabitha Littles, though, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Okay. And you would agree that typically the arrest warrants, when you're looking at a case like this, where you're not quite sure who's 100% responsible yet, your affidavits are typically the same.
I don't know what you're saying.
Okay, let's back up a little bit and let me get some exhibits and we'll go through it. Okay. Can I get all the defendant's exhibits? I can see through. There's A through E. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So let's start with the evidence log, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And this has already been admitted into evidence under Defendant's Exhibit C. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Your Honor, may we, yeah, I'm sorry, can we approach?
Actually, I'll just put on Elmo. I think I need it switched over.
I don't think it's on.
Ah, it's the on button. There we go. Thank you.
Anytime.
Okay, so I'm showing you the second page of Defendant's Exhibit C. And let me get it to focus here. Okay. So you'd agree, officer, that this is a New Mexico Department of Public Safety evidence report, right?
Yes, this is the old format. We've since changed. We went to a tracker system. It's pretty similar to the B system that Rio Rancho has.
Okay, well, let's talk about this one because this is the one that was used
Yes, ma'am.
during this investigation. And you would agree that up here at the top of this form has your name, right, Steve Montano?
It does, yes.
And that underneath it, we have the name of the person from whom property was obtained. We have the name of Andrew Romero.
Yes, that's correct.
And then, let's see, we've got a date on here somewhere. There it is. Let's go to the bottom. The date and time received was May 26, 2015 at 4:50 a.m. Do you agree with that?
Yes, ma'am.
And then, of course, that's you signing at the bottom as well.
That is my signature, yes, ma'am.
All right, so we've got a couple of items in here that you've listed, again, to account for all the important evidence that you're unveiling as you go through a case, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so let's look at the first item here. We've got one AR-6, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that says miscellaneous property, cigarettes, cords, etc., right?
Yes, ma'am.
That most recent one, I don't remember. You know, the bar hasn't.
And she, I think she called this, 47?
Which one? Okay, so AR-6, one AR-6 is miscellaneous property, cigarettes, cords, etc., right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so I'm showing you State's Exhibit 487. That's AR-6, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that has the cigarettes, the cords, and etc., as you detailed in your report.
Correct. The key,
And the keys, right, the keys under
chapstick, yes, ma'am.
there. Chapstick, it looks like a half-smoked cigarette over there.
Yes, an auxiliary cord. And, yes, that's it.
Okay, and so you agree that under this evidence log, the miscellaneous property, you don't specifically say key to the Durango, do you?
No.
Okay.
It was explained on my report.
Okay, so let's go to the next page. So you had two pages associated with the property obtained from Mr. Romero. You didn't complete this one though, did you?
Can you just pick it up just a little bit? I can't see the bottom.
See it? Sure. Let me see if I can zoom in.
Actually, if you just slide it up, I can tell you who wrote it.
If I could what?
Just slide it up,
Oh, slide it this way?
the other way. There you go. Oh, keep going. Okay, good.
Okay, so this one was by Paul Chavez?
Yes, ma'am.
But it has Rick Romero on the top.
Yes,
Okay. And so Paul Chavez was the one that collected this evidence.
correct.
And you'd agree that there's no mention in Durango key in here either, right?
No, but it's described on his report as well, saying what did happen with
What
it.
I'm asking you is it's not on this report.
It's not on that one, ma'am.
Okay. Instead, you're sort of lumping it in with this et cetera property on AR 6, correct?
I guess if that's what you assume, yes, ma'am.
I'm asking you, do you see the word key in here?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, you took a lot of pictures of Mr. Romero on this date, right?
No.
A lot of pictures were taken of him.
Yes.
And you're the case agent, so you know what pictures were taken of one of the suspects on your case.
Yes, I do.
And in fact, you recognized that picture, which was one of the pictures that was taken at that same time, right?
Correct. Paul Chavez, Agent Paul Chavez, or I'm sorry, Sergeant Paul Chavez with state police took those photos.
Okay, and as you were sitting in court during Paul Chavez's testimony, we saw some of those
Ryan.
pictures.
I'm going to object if she's going to ask this witness to testify on another witness's testimony.
I'm not doing that, Your Honor.
We continue.
There were other pictures put into evidence, and that you're aware of Mr. Romero during this interview on May 26th of 2015, right?
Yes.
And you know about, like you said, you already know about those pictures because you talked about him, or that you're the lead investigator in this case, right?
I guess if that's what you want to call it.
Okay. You were the lead investigator, weren't you?
Yes, along with Detective Rick Romero.
So you would agree there were pictures taken of both the front and the back of the white undershirt, right?
Yes.
There were also front and back pictures taken of the jean shorts.
Yes.
And in fact, there was even a close-up taken of the inside of the jean shorts showing the waist size of 34.
Correct.
There was a picture taken of the shorts that were worn under the jean shorts, which were like, sort of like warm-up shorts, like slick basketball shorts.
Correct.
Those were taken front and back as well.
Yes.
And then the underwear that Mr. Romero was wearing, there are pictures taken of that front and back.
Yes.
The currency that was found on Mr. Romero with the quarters laid out and the dollars and the fives were taking a picture of that as well, right?
Yes.
And of the checks.
Yes.
There was also a picture taken front and back and inside and outside of that blue sweatshirt that Mr. Romero was wearing.
Yes.
But there was no picture taken just of that key, correct?
No, there was a picture taken of the key.
Other than the one we saw, which is underneath stuff, right?
That was the picture of the key.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
And that states exhibit 487,
Correct.
right? This is the picture you took of the key.
No, I didn't take it.
This is the picture that was taken of the key.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Okay. And you tried this key out on the Durango, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we saw just quite a bit of evidence, the drone evidence, which shows sort of the aerial view of the scene, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's, sort of new technology, right? New-ish.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's to help document a scene well, right?
Correct.
So that for later prosecution, you have the ability to display to the jury various sort of vantage points and viewpoints of the scene.
Correct.
And you also have, which is a little more old school, those lapel cameras, right? That you can wear and show an encounter, right?
Well, it's not too old school. I don't have one, so
It's a little
I'm a
older
little
than
out of date on that one, too.
It's a little older than the drone technology, right?
It is, yes, ma'am.
And of course, you have cameras.
Yes.
And you have, designated law enforcement officers that are charged with either, taking pictures, taking video, or doing the drone stuff, right?
Correct. So crime scene agents, they assign them to do separate things. The case crime scene manager will assign them to do one thing. Crime scene manager will do one thing, and they'll assign different agents within the crime scene team to do separate tasks. I mean, the crime scene agent, crime scene manager can't do them all, so he has to manage those tasks.
And you'd agree, officer, that there is no video footage of that Durango being started by that particular key, right?
No, there's not.
And and there is no photo of that key actually inside either the ignition or the door lock of that Durango. You'd agree with that as well?
No, there's not.
All right, and I'm showing you Defendant's Exhibit E. Put up here on Elmo again.
Can,
I'm
can,
trying.
oh, okay, sorry.
I can't see it either. Let's see.
Back up.
Okay, can you see that all right?
Sure. Can you slide it over just a little bit? I think it's being obscured. Thank you, ma'am.
Good?
Yeah, that's
More?
fine. No, that's fine.
Okay, now this is item number 82. This is the key we've been talking about.
Let me look for, I'm sorry.
Sure.
This isn't our, so I'm not too familiar like where to look for stuff.
Okay, well, I'll help you. Okay, so you see up here.
Okay, I see it right there. Item number 082.
082, and we've got, under here, it lists out, this key we've been talking about, right? This Dodge.
Yes, ma'am.
And you'd agree that this document indicates, and this, of course, let me just show, this is the Rio Rancho Police Department.
Correct.
Chain of custody report, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Which lists out all the evidence as it comes in, goes out, who's checking it in, who's checking it out, right?
I believe so. If it works in the fashions that our tractor system works, is that once it's entered, it's tracked kind of like at the grocery store where you scan stuff. They scan it to in and out of, like just for instance, if I were to take an item out, they would scan it. I'd have to sign for it, and I take that piece of evidence, and when I bring it back, they'd scan it, return it back in with the date and time stamp of when that process took place.
And that's important to do because you don't want evidence getting lost or mishandled and things like that, right?
Correct. Yeah, there are times where I take a piece of evidence and it's taken for a prolonged time, and I will document it on a report or something to say what took place with it or what happened.
And you have no reason to believe that Rio Rancho Police does it any differently than state police.
Ma'am, I would have no reason to say that they don't.
Right. So looking at this particular item, item number 82, you would agree that in the detailed description right up here, it says Tabitha Little's key to Dodge Durango. That's what it says right there, right?
Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. And then you'd agree also that it says that this key was collected on 5/27 of 2015, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then it's collected, but it's not submitted into property until 10/22 of 2015. Is that correct?
That's what it looks like. And if I could, can I?
You just asked my next question.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
All right, and this is Defendant's Exhibit D, which was admitted yesterday into evidence. And this is sort of the whole packet, the Rio Rancho Police Department evidence report, right?
Jesus. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
And you'd agree that so bad it is, the date up at the top of this, even though there's got a staple going through it, if you need me to hand it to you, I could.
Sheesh. Yeah, let me see that. Can I?
May I approach, Robert? What's the date on the corner?
Can I take it off?
Sure.
It says July 27th, 2015.
Okay, thanks.
My son of a... I just poked myself. I'm going to take this off, okay?
Absolutely fine.
Never mind. I'm not going to do that. Go ahead.
We'll just be careful we don't get cut. All right, so I want you to flip to, and see if you find in there item number 82 from July 27th, right, of 2015.
From July 27th?
This is July 27th evidence report. I want you to flip through and see if you can find item 82.
Well, sure, I'll look.
Just let me know if you see it.
Okay, sure. So, item
Is
eight,
that- Is it there or not?
item 82 is not on here,
Okay,
but it won't be.
That's fine, and you can explain that in a sec.
Yes, ma'am.
So while you have that, while you have
Sure.
that exhibit, go ahead and tell me if there was some indication on that report that there was GSR collected from OMI, and it's in the first page or two.
Your Honor, I'm gonna object at this point. I think she's going a little bit too far in the contents of this document. We didn't create this document yet, nothing to do with entering evidence in Rio Rancho Police Department.
May I approach, Your Honor?
May-
Let me borrow that from you for a sec.
Yes, ma'am.
You had, even though you didn't participate in the interviews of Michelle Jaramillo and Crystal Romero,
Michelle who?
Jaramillo? Did I get their name wrong? Candelaria, I'm
Oh.
sorry, I'm tired. Michelle Candelaria and Crystal Romero,
Yes, ma'am.
they were there when Andrew Romero was there, right?
Yes.
Because they were all taken from the same vehicle that evening, or early morning hours.
Yes, ma'am.
And when you had them there, there was some evidence collected from both those individuals, Michelle and Crystal.
Yes.
And one of the pieces of evidence that was collected from both those individuals was the buccal swab from inside their mouth, correct?
The standard, yes.
Right. So the standard would be the DNA standard, right?
Yes. So a standard is basically a clean cotton swab that we take out of a package and we run along a cheek or both cheeks of that person. That cotton swab is then dried and placed in another clean envelope, packaged and sealed with evidence tape, and considered a standard. So that way when we submit them to the lab, it's considered something they can go off of in case they test other things. So yeah, that's what.
And so you collected that DNA from those two individuals, but it was never sent for testing with the DNA people, was it?
No, I don't believe so.
Pass the witness.
Officer Montano, you testified that all of the evidence in this case, regardless of who collected it, was eventually turned over and stored, if you will, by the Rio Rancho Police Department, correct?
It was, yes.
Does that include the Durango itself?
It does, yes.
Okay. Was the Durango and the key turned over to the Rio Rancho Police Department at the same time?
It was. So the key was photographed by I keep calling him, he's a sergeant, was a sergeant, Paul Chavez, And I made the decision to get the key, and as opposed to breaking a window to get an entry into the Durango, I told them to use the key, and when they were done with it, to send it with the Dodge Durango for Rio Rancho Police Department. And the reason I did that was because if we broke a window, then the vehicle would be compromised from climate, from wind, whatever else, and it wouldn't be as secure of a piece of evidence, the Dodge Durango that is. So the decision was made to maintain the key with the Dodge Durango, and we knew at some point after the Dodge Durango was removed from State Police Office on Carlisle and taken to the Rio Rancho Police Department lot, evidence lot, that we were going to have to do what's called a scan. So on previous testimony, you guys heard that we use a 3D scanner to take images of.
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, you answered the question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, but let me just follow up with one direct question regarding
Yes,
the
ma'am.
scan, okay? Were you present when those scans were scheduled?
I was not. I assigned agents to do that.
Okay, that's the only question you had about that. Okay, so I wanna look at defense exhibit, the one with Paul Chavez, the evidences. I believe Ms. Leo showed you this document, or, yeah, you gotta turn the lamp on.
No, I think you have it flip. You gotta flip it. There you go.
Upside down. It has been a long day. Okay. Now, let's see if I can, well, now I did it again. Now what did I do? I'm trying, what's the close-up on the phone? Oh, that's been a long day.
Turn it on.
Goodness gracious, okay. Okay, there we go. So you see on that document, counsel pointed out, first item there, AR-6. And what does that indicate, an AR-6? What does it say?
Miscellaneous property, cigarettes, cords, etc.
And that's AR-6.
Yes.
Is that what is being referred to in that document?
Yes, ma'am.
There's a cigarette, cord, it's whatever it said, cigarettes, cords, etc.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's where that is documented in the photograph.
Correct.
Was it also documented in your report?
It was, yes.
What about Paul Chavez's report? Was it documented there as well?
From what I'd read, yes.
Were there any other keys taken from Mr. Romero?
Not that I was aware of.
Okay.
Or I should say, not that I.
And again, if I could have exhibit, what are the key exhibit? 431. And again, State's Exhibit 431, is that the key that you took off of Andrew Romero in the early morning hours of May 26, 2016?
This is it, yes.
And is that the same key that's depicted in that photograph?
It is,
Okay.
except you're seeing the backside without the emblem.
And was it recovered from this item of clothing?
It was.
And
I removed it.
Okay, and who was wearing that item of clothing?
Andrew Romero.
1 second, Your Honor. And is that the same key that started the Durango?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
can I get the,
The evidence.
thank you.
See, you call your next witness.
You wanted to state rest?
See, ladies and gentlemen, the state has rested. Let's take a brief recess, all right?
All right.
Please be seated.
Your Honor, we're prepared to start our case this evening. Of course, we need to do motions for direct verdict. We're prepared to start our case this evening, but I don't know that Dr. Spence, our DNA expert, is going to be done anywhere near 5 o'clock. I think it'll take at least an hour for direct, and then I suspect that there's going to be some pretty substantial cross. So it's totally up to you. We're prepared to stay late and do it if you want us to, but hey, we'll leave it in your hands.
Let me ask our counsel, I know the state's DNA expert is here for rebuttal. Is she available tomorrow?
Sir.
She's not available now either.
You know what, I'll bring her
We'll
back.
find out.
Ron's kind of lazy. Your Honor, she is available for tomorrow. She can come back tomorrow. She said it wouldn't be a problem.
Any problem having, and I know your expert really here, I think since yesterday.
He enjoys the luxury of Los Limos, Your Honor.
I would say without having met anyone, after a while, I start figuring who is who, and I've seen him here a couple of days.
Yeah.
Let's start in the morning. I think everyone, I can see folks, you guys are pretty worn out as well. So it's the jury.
Let's begin the show.
So let's start, how long are your motions for directed verdict going to take?
Judge, I mean, I think we probably do those this evening.
Let's do those today, okay? And what I'll do is, I'm gonna instruct my bailiff to release the jury now, that way we can take care of those motions now. Okay, let's release the jury, take a 5-minute recess, then we'll start with those motions.
Okay, very good. Go ahead and release the jury. Tell them to be here now.